day-to-day transactions or latest copy of the information or current set of data.
So what that be OLTP?
Right. OLTP and this analytical database is OLDP. Yeah. So in technical terms, we call this as OLTP, and this is OLAP. OLAP. So this is more of historical information, as you know. This is more of latest information or day-to-day transactional data. So now, historical information means typically our data marts, data warehouses, wherein we maintain all the historical instances or archived information at one place for our future analysis of the large data sets. Obviously, for any business, we need to have all the older information available in order to analyze it, to make the upcoming businesses make more efficient or smarter. So now ETL comes here when we process our OLTP data to OLAP. So when we process our OLTP information on periodical basis to our OLAP systems, there comes the significance of ETL. Why? Because OLAP means it is keep on getting updated or refreshed or appended with continuous new information as well as updated information. So this incremental data, what we call it as incremental data, that means capturing only the new changes that has been added or new information that has been inserted into the OLTP systems. This information is continuously captured and updated in your OLAP systems. So for this particular activity, we'll be using ETL techniques. Why? Because say for example, we have a database which we considered as source database, and we intend to process the data into a target database. Let's say OLTP is my source, OLAP is my target. Now we need to run an ETL job, let's say on daily basis, and this ETL job is to bring the information from our source database and populate into target database. Now let's say I have 1 million records in my source database at the very beginning, let's say day 1. Now your ETL job will bring all 1 million records, and because this is the very first time, that means target is also completely empty. So it has brought and populated all 1 million records to target. Now another case, let's say by the second time the ETL job run in the source database, say for example, I have 1K new records are added. So when the ETL job runs, it should not reprocess the entire data again. It should be able to identify only those new records that are added and bring them and refresh into your target database, so that at the end of the day, the job will append the newly incoming records, making the count as total 1 million and 1K just by processing 1K records. So this is very important because in the real-time scenarios, we'll be dealing with millions and billions of the data. So obviously when we deal such kind of huge volumes, reprocessing the entire source volume into our OLAP systems isn't a practical approach, isn't a feasible approach. So this is one of the important technique that is applied in the process of ETL. And then there is also a data transformation phase. So now let's talk about what are these main phases in ETL. ETL is basically a short form of 3-phase activity called extraction, transformation, and loading. ETL, right? E for extraction, transformation, and loading. So extraction is to read the data from our source systems. So when I say source systems, it can be any kind of system, right? It can be any kind of system. For example, let's take an example like there is a retail store. Okay, there is a retail store. So this is a very big chain of retail stores. So this particular guy would like to capture different types of information on any typical business day. For example, at their billing counters, okay, at a particular store, at their billing counters, whatever the bill that is generated for each and every customer, say they are capturing this billing information in their backend databases, one of the relational database. So there is a retail store, and on a particular given day, they are capturing the billing information into a relational database, let's say Oracle. Now the same store has customer call service facility, right? That means if you can call onto their toll-free number to lodge any complaints or to know about more about their offers, right? Anything. So these call details, right? Their voice recordings and all. Let's say they are capturing that into an application database, something like SAP. Now again, the same store is capturing some other details at their warehouses about their inventory details, right? How many trucks of goods have been loaded or unloaded? What is a incoming volume of certain goods? So all these details, maybe they are capturing into an Excel database, right? Excel files. So if you observe, a retail store organization are capturing different forms of data on a particular business day. Now, these guys would like to maintain one centralized data warehouse to integrate all this information and to maintain that data at one centralized data warehouse for historical analysis and even more needs. So in order to achieve that, right, to all these, they would like to maintain a one centralized data warehouse. So to do this, we need the process of ETL to be applied. So coming to the three phases that we can incorporate on this need, extraction phase means to read the data from all these different sources and bring them into one common point. So that is what extraction phase is applied in a typical ETL project. To read or extract data from external source systems. That's what extraction phase is typically. And once the data is extracted from all your different source systems, then comes your transformation phase. So transformation phase is the important phase of all the three phases. We'll come back to that a little later. Next up, loading phase. Loading phase is again to deliver the data to our systems, which is typically our data warehouses or data part, typically a OLAP system. So to write or load the data into external target systems. So these target systems can be of any type. It can be a relational database. It can be an application database. It can be a file that you may need to generate sometimes. So it doesn't matter. You will be able to deliver the data to any kind of target system. And also here, as I mentioned above, there is a concept of incremental loading, which is again an important aspect of data loading, which is applied in this particular case. What do you mean by incremental loading? As we have seen here, the process need to identify only the incremental data, the newly available data and process only the data to the target system. That's what incremental loading concept. So basically, extraction is reading of the data, loading is writing of the data to target systems. So now let's talk about transformation phase, which is the important phase in all these three phases. So data transformation means you are transforming the data from one particular form to another form. So it can be cleansing of the data, it can be validation of the data, or even it can be derivation of the data. So basically data scrubbing means data cleansing or validation, and even data derivation is also considered as one of the data transformation activities. For
Okay.
example, let's take a few examples to understand this better. So cleansing means, say for example, there is some data that you are reading from your source database and there is a date field. Okay, it's carrying a date values. Now, few records are having the date value in this format. Few records are having the date values in this format, and few are in this format, and so on. Okay? There is no standard format it is maintained. Though all the dates are representing the same, there is no standard format. So when you process the data through ETL, you can standardize all these non-standard formats into one standard format that you wish to have. Okay? Something like 18 Feb 2017, which I'd like to maintain the same format for all the records. So this is basically called as data standardization technique, which falls under the category of data cleansing, which is identified as one of the data transformation. So basically here we're transforming from non-standard data to a standardized data format. It can be, so there are many more things that we can categorize as cleansing, right? There is any unwanted characters that you want to trim out, which you want to omit before you process and save that information, and so on. And then next comes data validation. Data validation is to check the authenticity of the data. For example, we are processing email ID values, and your client asks you to process email IDs only that are valid. So you need to check where the string, the email ID string contains your @ symbol and domain suffix, right? Like hotmail.com or gmail.com or rediff.com and so on. So these all checks will be applying on the data to make sure the incoming email string is in a valid form or not. That's one of the examples that we can talk about as data validation, which is nothing but checking the validity or authenticity of the data. Next comes data derivation, which is another form of data transformation. Data derivation means we need to derive new values which are not coming readily available from our source system, right? We need to derive it based upon the business transformation logic that we were asked to do. For example, there is an employee information that I am processing, and say we are getting salary and commission as two field values from our source database. So here the requirement here is we were asked to generate total salary of an employee, annual salary of an employee, and tax details of these employees. Total salary, annual salary, and tax. These values are not readily coming in from our source database. We were given salary and commission. So what we can do is we can derive these values with the help of raw data coming from our source. Total salary can be derived something like a summation of salary plus commission, whereas annual salary we can multiply total salary by 12 times, tax can be applied on annual salary or some percentage, whichever is applicable. Right? So this is called as data derivation. We are deriving new data values based upon the business logic. So these are the categories, subcategories of data transformation, basically cleansing from non-standardized or uncleansed to cleansed or standardized format, checking the validation of the data, and even deriving new sets of values based upon the business logic. While extraction is to read and loading is to deliver the data. So those are the three phases of ETL: extraction, transformation, and loading. Right? So where exactly these particular activities are applied? Typically when we process our OLTP data to OLAP systems, which are typically data warehouse or data ops. So that's the generic explanation of ETL, where exactly it is used and what is meant by ETL in those three phases. Any questions? If you have any question, let me know.
No, it's fine. It's everything's okay.
All right. So whatever the things that we talked about, it's a generic explanation of ETL, and to carry out these ETL activities. Back in days of maybe earlier to 15-20 years back, we used to write database scripts, but then we started having tools to carry out all these activities efficiently. So in the present day market, there are many ETL tools available. Among all those, to list down the most popular tools available out there, Informatica Powercenter is the most popular tool, while the next one is IBM DataStage. We also have Oracle Component, Oracle Data Integrator, and even Microsoft Component, Microsoft SQL Server Integration Service, and even Ab Initio. And these days we can also find few open source tools emerging in the ETL market, that is Talend, Pentaho, etc. Right? So these are the popular tools. There are many other tools, very small tools, but among all those is the most prominent ETL tools available in the market. And again, in these top tools also, Informatica Powercenter is the most popular tool. To give you an example, Informatica clientele count is more than 7K global customers, while the next popular one, DataStage, is having around 4K. So you can see the difference between the lead tool and the next lead tool. Right? It's almost 40 to 50% different or higher. So that's the market occupancy of Informatica Powercenter. Why? Because it is the most efficient tool to handle many number of systems. It can be any database system. It's most likely the driver to communicate with the databases available with Informatica Powercenter. At the same time, the ease of handling the data, handling huge volumes of data, is very high with Informatica Powercenter than compared to any other tools. So those are the few tools that we have in the market that are serving the ETL needs. And in this course, we are going to learn about Informatica Powercenter. Right? So to talk about Informatica Powercenter a little bit in detail, first of all, Informatica is the name of a corporation, and this corporation produces various data integration tools. One among them is Powercenter. Which is used for ETL activities. Okay. So there are many other tools along with Powercenter, like data quality, coming from same Informatica, which is usually called as IDQ. There is master data management, there is cloud server, right? There is business to business tool, Power Exchange. There are many other tools are available. So among all these in-house tools of Informatica Corporation, Again, Powercenter is the most popular tool because it is the one that brings major revenue for Informatica Corporation. Most popular tool among its tools. So that is the reason usually we refer that as Informatica tool. In the market, when we talk about Powercenter, usually we call it as Informatica tool and all. Okay, if someone is talking about saying that I'm working on Informatica tool or I've been assigned to Informatica project, that means usually it is taken for granted that it is Informatica Powercenter, right? So that's the popularity of that tool. But now that we are going to learn about this tool, let's be clear that we're going to learn the tool name Informatica Powercenter, which is used for ETL activities. So that's about a brief introduction about what is what. Okay. So next, now let's dig into the more details of Informatica Powercenter. Please feel free to stop me anywhere if you feel like I'm...
Everything's fine. You're very clear. I understand what you're saying.
Right. Sure. Okay, so Informatica Powercenter. So this is a server and client architectural tool. That means we'll be having one centralized server hosting all the need services, repository, and so on. And those all services will be accessing and using through the client components across your project. And also this is called as service-oriented architecture as well. Service-oriented architecture means there will be a service that is serving each and every need in the server level. So let's talk about, okay, in a typical Informatica project, we'll see three different roles. Okay, three different roles. Administrator role, developer, and tester. Okay, Informatica administrator, Informatica developer, Informatica tester. So administrators are the ones that maintains our servers, creation of the services, creation of the users, granting access, right, maintaining security, server upgrades. All those things comes under the responsibility of administrator. And then comes the developer, obviously, as you know, the one that writes the code, builds the project. And then there is testers. Tester, Informatica tester, usually referred as ETL tester, the one that validates the code that was built by developer. So this course that we're going to learn is developer course. Okay, Informatica developer course is what we're going to learn. There are separate tracks for Informatica administrator because that's altogether a different role that you'll be handling in the project. Usually developers are not given the administrator activities, same with testers and so on. So as we are going to learn about developer, we are not going to go in deep about server details. There are few components of server that a developer needs to be just aware of. He just need to know what they are. So those three components we'll just know about, and then we can continue with learning in detail about the client components. Because all the development and testing is done from the client side. Only the configuration and maintenance is done on the server end. So those the three main components that a developer needs to be aware of. A repository service, or let's say a repository database, and then there is a component called repository service and integration service. These are the three components among many other components available in the server. In this one, as a developer, it is good to know what are these so that you can efficiently work in the environment. The repository database means it is a relational database maintained by Informatica server in order to save all the metadata about all the components and the code that is developed on it. Okay? It is a repository of all the information that are having all the projects built on this particular server. Okay? Be it the details of the tables, be it the details of ETL scripts, be it the details of transformation logics that you write. Each and everything that a developer creates is coming and getting saved here in this repository database. So this database is exclusively maintained by and accessed by Informatica server, usually not read by any other people, any project personnel. So it is a relational database. It can be configured on Oracle, it can be configured on SQL Server, DB2, whatever it is. Basically, it should be a relational database maintained by Informatica server for the metadata storage. And then next comes a couple of services that we need to be aware of. First, repository service. You see, as I mentioned above, this is a service-oriented architecture. That means we need an exclusive service to be able to handle a particular activity. So in here, repository service helps us to communicate with the centralized repository database, which is hosted on the server. Okay, as I mentioned, all the developers and testers will be accessing the server from their client end, right? From the client machines. So how do I communicate with this database that is hosted on the server? So obviously, then comes a service called repository service.